Fake news is probably a term you've heard a lot these past 4 years, and you might view it as a big threat to political dialogue because you know that there's individuals out there that purposely mislead others for the sole purpose of political gain. Or you might view fake news as just an easy way to brush off certain news stories that you don't like. Maybe you don't like what it is they're talking about, so you just say that it's fake news, and that way your supporters never believe anything that that publication has to say ever again. But regardless of your opinion on what fake news is and how fake news is used, I'm going to share with you 3 stories about why it's still alive and well. Because it's really getting harder and harder to argue that fake news isn't something that exists today. And 2 of the news stories are a little bit older, but they still drive home the point. One news story, it's going to be the first one I share with you, is something that should really be breaking news. It's something that kind of broke, I think, 2 or 3 days ago at this point, at the time of recording the video, but it really should be wall-to-wall news coverage right now. But what you need to understand is with fake news, the retraction story is never going to be as big as the initial story. And that's really how it's used on a political level, because that initial story is always going to get that 24/7 wall-to-wall news coverage. Everyone talks about it and everyone believes it. Why? Because it comes down to like a court of public opinion type thing. So everyone buys into it, and then okay, everyone brushes it off. It's on to the next news story. So a few months will go by, and that particular news publication will issue that retraction or that correction, but it'll be very silent. They'll just kind of publish something. They won't really make it too public, and that way you really have to kind of dig deep and find it. Depending on where you get your news from will determine if you even hear about the retraction story. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first news story that we're going to be talking about, I believe I got this from the Daily Mail, and this is talking about the Washington Post getting a lot of heat right now because they finally admitted that they misquoted Trump when he had that big call for the Georgia elections investigator. And that was, everyone was alleging that what he said, it was some anonymous source, he was telling someone to find the fraud. And if you do find the fraud, you will be a national hero. So they were really trying to make it seem like he was telling this election investigator, just make it up. Just make it up so that way I can win Georgia and maybe I'll have a pathway to victory, back to the White House. So finally, 2 months later, they issue a retraction and say, oh yeah, because I believe the Georgia investigation group or whomever, they released, where is it? The Georgia Secretary of State's office has now released the December 23rd recording. So now because people actually get to hear the true recording, oh, now we're going to retract the statement. We're going to say, hey, sorry, we messed up. So again, you think this is getting as many clicks as that initial story? Absolutely not. It's already in the bag. Everyone already believes that Trump actually was trying to overturn the election in terms of telling the Georgia investigator, just make up that there was fraud so that way I can win. So it's going to be tough to kind of come back from it because no one's going to want to hear this, right? Everyone is kind of digging their heels into where they stand. But now let's get into some older ones. You remember this picture? This is Nick Salmon. He was one of those Covington Catholic kids. I think they wound up going to the White House. It was some field trip. So they got on the red MAGA hats. And this was a pretty big news story. I want to say it was maybe back in 2016, 2017. So the big news story was that Nick Salmon, he was this instigator. He's smirking in front of this Native American who was just peacefully trying to drum, which, by the way, this guy was actually drumming in this kid's ear. He walked up to him. He was the one that provoked this particular situation, but everyone looked at this particular image. So you kind of see Nick Salmon has like this weird smile, and obviously it's very easy when you only have a picture to make up your own story behind it. So everyone was able to run with it and say, look how sinister this kid looks. Yeah, this kid is pure evil, this and that. I actually saw individuals tweet about how Nick Salmon has a very punchable face, which is funny because the people tweeting that have probably never been punched in the face. But anyway, the real thing I'm trying to get at is if you remember that Greta Thunberg, whatever her name is, the how dare you, that chick, when she came out and she was speaking about the whole climate crisis and her belief in climate change, anyone that attacked her, well, they were met with, she's just a kid. Leave her out of it. Don't attack her personally. Well, this kid was a kid. Oh, but that's right. He had on that red MAGA hat, so of course he's pure evil. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling. But if you're still with me, they ran with the story that Nick Salmon provoked this attack or this particular situation. Months later, comes out that it was all made up. I forget if people had, I think it wound up being that people actually had video evidence, and these kids are standing on the steps, and this guy comes up and he provokes the situation. So Nick Salmon and his lawyers, I think they wound up actually suing, whether it was CNN or it might have even been Washington Post. I forget who exactly, and they had a big settlement deal. Why? Because it was fake news. But again, did a lot of people listen to the retraction story, or did a lot of people maybe buy into the fact that, hey, maybe that news story was made up? Not initially, maybe now, simply because Nick Salmon and his lawyer, they won that big settlement case. But anyway, that's just another example of fake news and how it's used politically. Why? Because they like to say, oh, anybody that's a Republican, they're awful people, right? They're always at fault. And the last one. This is something that's probably the oldest of the three examples. And this was back when Trump was running for his first campaign run, or his first presidential run. So this was probably back in 2016, like the summer before the actual election. So Trump was mocked because, or people were dragging Trump because he was allegedly mocking a disabled reporter. And this was the particular reporter that everyone was talking about. So Trump used to do his thing where he would kind of like make that face in that particular photo. And he'd say like, I don't remember. So everyone was trying to say he was mocking this guy. So, okay, you read that initial news story and you say, wow, this Trump guy, he's awful. But then you actually look into the news story and you say, oh, wait a minute, that's just something Trump would do to mock people who kind of forget their lines, or maybe they get caught in a lie, so they start to stutter their words. And that's what Trump would do. He actually did it for Ted Cruz as well. I forget whether it was on the debate stage or maybe Trump was at a rally. He was doing that same thing, that same, I don't remember, mocking Ted Cruz. So was he actually mocking the reporter? No. But it's a news story that they were able to run with. Why? Because it fit the narrative that Trump or his supporters or this random kid that decided to take a field trip to the state capital, or Washington that is, right? Our nation's capital. And, well, he clearly had to provoke something because he had on that red MAGA hat. So hopefully, if you're still with me, you learned today that fake news is, one, alive and well, but two, that initial news story is always going to get more clicks than the retraction. Pretty much in all the cases I showed you, the retraction didn't get anywhere near as much play as that initial news story. Maybe with the exception of Nick Salmon, simply because, man, they had a big settlement deal because they really did kind of ruin that kid's life. But anyway, hopefully you know a little bit more about fake news, you understand where it is that I'm coming from, and maybe now you'll kind of listen to what it is in regards to when certain news stories are considered breaking news. You won't just run with that initial story. You'll sit back, try and gather some more facts, and you'll kind of be a little more objective in terms of not buying into everything the news tells you. Right when they say something, chances are they don't have all the facts and they're just trying to appeal to your emotions. But that's just my opinion. So let me know your thoughts on this video. Do you agree with fake news? Do you disagree? You think it's something that's actually a big threat to political dialogue in today's society? Do you think it's just something that's an easy way to brush off certain news stories that you don't like what it is that they're talking about? Regardless of your opinion, I want you to comment below and let me know your thoughts. But I appreciate you sticking through the video, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.